a time for joy, laughter, and the warmth of family. But on December 26th, 1996, in the quiet, snowy town of Boulder, Colorado, the Ramsey family woke up to a nightmare that would haunt them and the world for decades to come. A little girl just 6 years old was found dead in her own home, her life stolen in the most horrific way imaginable. Her name was JonBenét Ramsey. JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6th, 1990, in Atlanta, Georgia, to JonBenét Ramsey and Patricia Patsy Ramsey. From the moment she entered the world, she was a ray of sunshine, her golden curls bouncing with every step, her bright blue eyes sparkling with curiosity, and her smile lighting up any room she entered. Her parents adored her, and she quickly became the center of their universe. John Ramsey, a successful businessman and the CEO of Access Graphics, a computer distribution company, had built a comfortable life for his family. Patsy, a former beauty queen herself, having been crowned Miss West Virginia in 1977, saw a star in her daughter and introduced her to the world of child beauty pageants when JonBenét was just 4 years old. The Ramsey family moved to Boulder, Colorado in 1991, settling into a large, elegant Tudor-style home at 755 15th Street. The house, with its red brick exterior, white trim, and sprawling layout, was a symbol of their success. A 4-story mansion with a sprawling basement, filled with rooms that echoed with the laughter of children. JonBenét and her older brother, Burke Ramsey, who was 9 years old at the time, grew up in this idyllic setting. Burke was a quiet, reserved boy, often overshadowed by his sister's outgoing personality and the attention she received from her pageant career. JonBenét thrived in the spotlight, winning titles like Little Miss Colorado, America's Royale Miss, and National Tiny Miss Beauty. She loved performing, dancing, singing, and dazzling audiences with her charm. But beneath the glittering costumes and perfectly rehearsed routines, JonBenét was still a little girl who loved playing with her dolls, drawing pictures, and spending time with her family. Christmas 1996 was supposed to be a special time for the Ramseys. They had big plans: a family trip to their vacation home in Charlevoix, Michigan, followed by a Disney cruise to celebrate John's 53rd birthday. The holiday season had always been a cherished time for the family, a time to come together and create memories. On Christmas Eve, the Ramseys attended a church service where JonBenét sang in the children's choir, her voice ringing out with the innocence of a child. The next day, Christmas morning, was filled with the excitement of opening presents. JonBenét squealed with delight as she unwrapped a new bicycle, a gift from her father. She couldn't wait to ride it, but the day was packed with activities, and there was no time to take it for a spin. That evening, the family attended a Christmas party at the home of their close friends, Fleet and Priscilla White. The Whites lived just a few miles away, and their annual party was a tradition for Boulder's elite. The party was a festive affair, with twinkling lights, holiday music, and the aroma of freshly baked cookies filling the air. JonBenét, dressed in a red sweater and black velvet pants, ran around with the other children, her laughter echoing through the house. She played with the White's daughter Daphne, while Burke joined a group of boys in a game of tag. John and Patsy mingled with the other guests, sipping wine and exchanging holiday greetings. It was a night of warmth and celebration, a moment of happiness frozen in time. But as the clock ticked closer to 9 p.m., JonBenét began to grow tired. Her eyelids drooped, and she curled up on her mother's lap, her tiny hand clutching a stuffed animal she had brought along. Patsy decided it was time to head home. John scooped JonBenét into his arms, her head resting on his shoulder, and the family said their goodbyes. The drive back to 755 15th Street was quiet. Burke stared out the window, watching the snowflakes fall gently to the ground, while JonBenét slept soundly in the back seat. It was around 9:30 p.m. when they pulled into the driveway. John carried JonBenét upstairs to her bedroom, a cozy space decorated with pastel colors, stuffed animals, and a canopy bed fit for a princess. Patsy followed close behind, pulling the covers over her daughter and kissing her forehead. "Good night, my sweet angel," she whispered, turning off the light. Burke went to his own room, just down the hall, and the house fell silent. The Ramseys had no idea that this would be the last peaceful moment they would ever know. The next morning, December 26th, Patsy Ramsey woke up early, around 5:30 a.m. She had a busy day ahead, packing for their trip to Michigan, organizing the children's clothes, and making sure everything was ready for their flight. She slipped on her robe and made her way downstairs, her slippers padding softly against the hardwood floor. As she descended the spiral staircase that led from the second floor to the kitchen, something caught her eye. On one of the steps there was a piece of paper, a note, written in black ink, sprawled across 3 pages. Patsy's heart skipped a beat as she bent down to pick it up. Her eyes scanned the first few lines, and her blood ran cold. "Mr. Ramsey," the note began, "we are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We have your daughter. If you want to see her alive, you will follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. Any deviation from our instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. Do not contact the police, the FBI, or anyone else. If you do, she dies." The note was signed SBTC, a cryptic acronym that would later baffle investigators. Patsy's hands trembled as she read the words over and over, her mind racing with fear. The amount, $118,000, was oddly specific, almost exactly the amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus that year. Who could have known that detail? Was this someone close to the family? Patsy let out a scream that echoed through the house. "John! John! They've taken JonBenét!" Her voice was shrill, laced with panic. John bolted out of bed, his heart pounding as he raced downstairs. He found Patsy on the staircase clutching the note, her face pale and her eyes wide with terror. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Patsy thrust the note into his hands, tears streaming down her face. "They've taken her, John. They've taken our baby." John's eyes darted across the page, his mind struggling to process the words. He dropped the note and ran to JonBenét's room, hoping against hope that this was some kind of cruel joke. But her bed was empty, the covers untouched, since Patsy had tucked her in the night before. The Ramseys searched the house frantically, calling out JonBenét's name, their voices echoing through the empty halls. They checked every room, every closet, every corner, but she was nowhere to be found. Burke, woken by the commotion, stumbled out of his room, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice small and confused. Patsy pulled him into her arms, shielding him from the horror unfolding around them. John, his hands shaking, picked up the phone and dialed 911, ignoring the note's warning not to contact the police. My daughter's been kidnapped, he told the operator, his voice breaking. Please, you have to help us. Within minutes, the first police officers arrived at 755 15th Street, their sirens cutting through the stillness of the snowy morning. Officer Rick French was the first on the scene, followed by Detective Linda Arndt. The house quickly filled with people, police officers' friends, and neighbors who had heard the news, and rushed over to offer support. Patsy's best friend, Barbara Fernie, arrived with her husband, John Fernie, and the Whites, Fleet and Priscilla, came straight from their home, their faces etched with worry. The atmosphere was chaotic, with people milling about, offering hugs and words of comfort, but the air was thick with dread. Detective Arndt took charge, instructing the officers to search the house while John and Patsy waited in the living room, clinging to each other in desperation. Hours passed with no sign of JonBenét, and the tension in the house grew unbearable. Patsy sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, whispering prayers under her breath. John paced back and forth, his mind racing with possibilities. Had someone really taken their daughter? Was she still alive? The ransom note had promised a phone call from the kidnappers by 10 a.m., but the phone never rang. The silence was deafening. Around 1 p.m., Detective Arndt suggested that John and Fleet White search the house again in case the police had missed something. John nodded, his face grim, and the two men began to comb through the rooms. They made their way to the basement, a dark, cluttered space that the family rarely used. The basement was a maze of storage rooms, filled with boxes, old furniture, and holiday decorations. John pushed open a door to a small windowless room known as the wine cellar, a space they used to store odds and ends. And there he saw her. JonBenét was lying on the cold concrete floor, her tiny body wrapped in a white blanket, one of her favorite blankets, the one she often slept with. A cord was tied tightly around her neck, forming a makeshift garrote, and her hands were bound with duct tape. Her face was pale, her lips blue, her eyes closed forever. John let out a guttural scream, a sound of pure anguish that reverberated through the house. "No, no, my baby!" he cried, falling to his knees and scooping her into his arms. Her body was cold, lifeless, her once vibrant spirit gone. Fleet White stood frozen, his hands trembling as he watched the heartbreaking scene unfold. John carried JonBenét upstairs, tears streaming down his face, and laid her on the living room floor, hoping, against hope, that she could somehow be saved. But it was too late. Detective Arndt called for backup, and the house was quickly sealed off as a crime scene. But the investigation was already compromised. The presence of so many people, friends, family, neighbors, had contaminated the scene, making it nearly impossible to preserve evidence. JonBenét's body was covered with a blanket, and officers began to process the area, but the damage was done. The ransom note was sent to the lab for analysis, and what they found only deepened the mystery. The note had been written on paper from a legal pad in the Ramseys' own kitchen, using a pen that belonged to Patsy. The handwriting bore striking similarities to Patsy's own, a detail that would later fuel speculation about her involvement. The autopsy revealed the gruesome details of JonBenét's death. She had suffered a massive skull fracture, likely caused by a heavy object such as a flashlight or a golf club. The blow had been delivered with such force that it cracked her skull in two, causing severe brain trauma. A garrote made from a cord and a broken paintbrush found in the basement had been used to strangle her, the knots tied with precision. There were signs of a struggle, abrasions on her body, a small amount of blood in her underwear, but no definitive evidence of sexual assault, though some experts believe the scene might have been staged. A piece of undigested pineapple was found in her stomach, suggesting she had eaten shortly before her death. The time of death was estimated to be between midnight and 2 a.m., just hours after the family returned from the Whites' party. As news of the murder spread, the media descended on Boulder like a swarm of vultures. JonBenét's pageant photos were splashed across every newspaper and television screen, her innocent smile a haunting contrast to the grisly details of her death. The public became obsessed with the case, and the Ramseys found themselves at the center of a firestorm. Why had the ransom note been written on their own paper? Why did the amount match John's bonus so precisely? And why were there no clear signs of forced entry into the house? The questions piled up, and a suspicion quickly turned towards the family. The Boulder Police Department, inexperienced in handling homicide cases, struggled to keep up with the investigation. They made critical errors from the start, failing to secure the crime scene, allowing friends and family to roam freely through the house, and neglecting to separate the Ramseys for individual interviews. Evidence was mishandled, and key leads were overlooked. A broken window in the basement, discovered by John Ramsey months earlier, raised the possibility of an intruder, but there were no clear signs that it had been used to enter the house that night. A small suitcase was found near the window, positioned as if someone had used it to climb out, but its significance was unclear. Unidentified footprints in the snow outside the house were noted, but they led nowhere. And traces of DNA from an unknown male were found on JonBenét's clothing. Touch DNA that didn't match anyone in the family. But the sample was too small to provide a definitive lead. Theories began to emerge, each one more chilling than the last. Some believed an intruder had broken into the Ramsey home, driven by a twisted obsession with JonBenét. Her pageant career had made her a public figure in Boulder, and her photos had been published in local newspapers, potentially attracting the attention of a predator. The ransom note's mention of a small foreign faction suggested a possible motive. Perhaps a disgruntled employee of John's company, or someone with a grudge against the family. A stun gun might have been used to subdue JonBenét, as small marks on her body suggested, but the evidence was inconclusive. A neighbor reported seeing a strange man near the Ramsey house on Christmas night, but the lead went nowhere. Others pointed the finger at the Ramseys themselves. The ransom note's handwriting, so similar to Patsy's, raised eyebrows. Why would a kidnapper take the time to write a 3-page note in the middle of a crime, using paper and a pen from the victim's own home? Some theorized that Patsy, under stress from the pressures of JonBenét's pageant career and her own battle with ovarian cancer, which she had survived in 1993, might have snapped. Perhaps JonBenét had wet the bed, a recurring issue that Patsy had struggled with, or disobeyed her mother in some way, leading to a moment of rage. Could Patsy have accidentally killed her daughter and staged the scene to cover it up? Another theory focused on Burke Ramsey, JonBenét's 9-year-old brother. Some speculated that Burke might have been involved in his sister's death, perhaps an accident that spiraled out of control. The pineapple found in JonBenét's stomach became a key piece of evidence. A bowl of pineapple and milk, with Burke's fingerprints on it, was found on the kitchen table, suggesting that JonBenét might have eaten a late-night snack with her brother. Could the two children have argued, leading Burke to lash out? One theory suggested that Burke might have hit JonBenét with a flashlight in a fit of anger, causing the skull fracture. The parents, desperate to protect their only remaining child, might have staged the crime scene, writing the ransom note and creating the appearance of a kidnapping. But there was no concrete evidence to support this theory, and Burke was never officially named a suspect. The Ramseys, meanwhile, maintained their innocence. They hired a team of lawyers and private investigators, a move that only deepened public suspicion. Why would innocent parents need such heavy legal protection? John and Patsy gave interviews to the media, tearfully pleading for the public's help in finding their daughter's killer, but their demeanor struck some as odd. Patsy appeared overly emotional, her makeup streaked with tears, while John seemed cold and detached. The couple refused to cooperate fully with the police, further fueling speculation about their involvement. As the months turned into years, the case grew colder. The Boulder Police Department faced intense criticism for their handling of the investigation, and the district attorney, Alex Hunter, struggled to move the case forward. In 1998, a grand jury was convened to determine whether there was enough evidence to charge the Ramseys. After months of deliberation, the jury voted to indict John and Patsy on charges of child abuse resulting in death. But Hunter refused to sign the indictment, citing a lack of sufficient evidence. The decision was a blow to the investigation, leaving the case in limbo. In 2006, a new lead emerged. A man named John Mark Carr, a former schoolteacher with a history of obsessive behavior, confessed to JonBenét's murder. Carr claimed he had been with JonBenét on the night of her death, saying he had drugged her and accidentally killed her during a sexual assault. But his confession quickly unraveled. His DNA didn't match the unknown male sample found on JonBenét's clothing, and his story was filled with inconsistencies. Investigators concluded that Carr was a false confessor, seeking attention in the glare of the media spotlight. In 2008, new DNA testing brought a glimmer of hope. Advanced touch DNA technology identified genetic material from an unknown male on JonBenét's clothing, and the sample didn't match anyone in the Ramsey family. The Boulder District Attorney's Office issued a formal apology to the Ramseys, officially clearing them of suspicion. But the DNA trail went cold, and the identity of the unknown male remained a mystery. Some experts questioned the reliability of touch DNA, noting that it could have come from a factory worker who handled JonBenét's clothing during manufacturing, or even from cross-contamination at the crime scene. JonBenét Ramsey's murder became one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American history. Her face, frozen in time, still haunts those who hear her story. The little girl who once danced across pageant stages, her eyes sparkling with dreams, was gone, replaced by a legacy of tragedy and mystery. The Ramsey family was forever changed by her death. Patsy Ramsey passed away in 2006 after a long battle with ovarian cancer, never knowing who killed her daughter. John Ramsey remarried and continued to advocate for justice, but the pain of losing JonBenét never faded. Burke, now in his late 30s, has lived a quiet life out of the public eye, though he faced renewed scrutiny in 2016 when a CBS documentary revisited the case and pointed the finger at him once again. The questions surrounding JonBenét's death remain unanswered, even after nearly 3 decades. Who wrote the ransom note? Why was there no sign of forced entry? And what really happened in the Ramsey house on that fateful Christmas night? Was JonBenét the victim of a random intruder? A predator who had watched her from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Or was the truth far closer to home, hidden within the walls of 755 15th Street, buried in the secrets of a family torn apart by grief? The mystery of JonBenét Ramsey continues to captivate true crime enthusiasts, amateur sleuths, and investigators alike. Her story has been the subject of countless books, documentaries, and podcasts, each one offering a new theory, a new suspect, a new piece of the puzzle. But the puzzle remains incomplete. The pieces scattered across the snowy streets of Boulder, Colorado. Perhaps one day, advances in forensic technology will finally reveal the truth. Perhaps a forgotten piece of evidence will come to light, shining a spotlight on the darkness that engulfed a little girl's life. Or perhaps JonBenét's killer will take their secret to the grave, leaving the world to wonder forever. What do you think happened that night in Boulder, Colorado? Was JonBenét betrayed by someone she knew, or taken by a monster lurking in the shadows? Share your thoughts in the comments below, if you dare.